Hello, friends. So happy to have you here with me today at Radical Joy. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time with me, well, I'm glad you're here. Each week, I'm here with you talking to myself about things that weigh on my mind and heart, hoping if you're dealing with something similar, we can adjust our perspectives as you listen. Hey, if you're struggling with something that needs immediate attention, please know that help is available. Just dial 988 nationwide in the U.S. to reach the Mental Health and Suicide Crisis Hotline. All of us here at CLW Studios believe that mental health is a vital part of our well being. The more people I meet and the more places I go, the more I realize how important it is to make people aware of the fact that there is no shame in enjoying the parts of our lives that are incredible. It's time for some radical joy. And this week, the three fingers pointing back at me are for up, down, or sideways. I got into a deep conversation yesterday with a friend of mine. We've known each other for years and years. He grew up in Colorado. That's where we got to be friends while I was working in Aspen. He moved out to Malibu, California, spent a pretty good bit of time there. And then now he's back in Colorado. And he and I have the most interesting conversations. He will get a mindset and he'd be like, "Hey, I've been thinking about something. Great. Let's hear it. What's going on?" And we got to talking about language, more specifically, language and gender. And it was just really interesting to me because for some reason he has something stuck in his craw about male, female, man, woman, sex, gender, etc. And I'm trying to do the best I can with explaining it as I know. And he continues to get his feathers ruffled about it. I said, "Great, great, great. Okay, okay, okay." He says, "If we don't have a specific positive like grounding, an anchor of sorts for communication, for language," he says, "the whole thing just goes up in smoke." And I say, "Great. Why does gender have to be the thing that has to be the yes no binary?" And we continue to tumble on around things like that. And then I said, "Great, super." Okay, said, let's just push that whole thing to the side and let's think about something else. Said, "Which way is up?" And he stops, and you can tell that he's careful how he answers because he thinks I'm trying to trap him, which is exactly what I'm trying to do. Because for up, he says, "Well, toward the sky." I was like, "Great, wonderful." I said, "Now, what happens if you're in outer space? Where is up now?" He's like, "No, wow, 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 wow." And we go around and around and around. It's like, okay, so that's the thing. You are looking for an absolute in something that does not exist. Everything, and I mean absolutely everything, has a context within which it operates, moves, and is. Up on the planet Earth is pointing toward the sky. Up in outer space has zero meaning because you have literally all of the directions, an infinite amount of directions that could qualify. Gravity, we brought that up. It's like, okay, great. What is gravity? Well, that's a constant. Exactly. It's a constant on the surface of the planet. I said, and the farther away you get from the surface of the planet, that amount, that idea, that concept changes. If you're on the surface of the moon, if you're on the surface of Mars, these are things that need a context in order to operate. And we had this fascinating conversation. I love talking with this guy, though we do get frustrated with one another quite a bit, understandably. I think the best conversations do have a little friction in them. At the end of the day, I would still absolutely take a bullet for him, probably shoulder or maybe a shin, still a bullet. And whenever we started talking about up, it started the wheels turning for another moment that I could spend with us here at Radical Joy. Because for me, up, down, and sideways are all very interesting ideas, not just in their ideas of their position or direction on an axis, also in their idea of what is good, bad, indifferent, or just different. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Up It can be any number of things, like you're going up the hill is seen as a sign of difficulty, or you're moving up in the world is something that is seen as a very positive thing. Down, well, it's all downhill from here. Oh, you're getting older, things are just going to continue to get worse and worse. Or feeling down in the dumps. Again, the connotation is that this is a negative place to find oneself. Uh, or to quote a somewhat antiquated phrase or turn of phrase, I'm down with that. Like, that's good enough for me to want to join in the fun, that sort of situation. I was just, kind of grasping at straws for a way to make down equal good, in the very surface idea of the word good. And then the word sideways came into the situation because you got up and down, you got X and Y. Pardon me. You got up and down. That's usually just X. And then you've got Y, which is side to side. That's going to be our sideways. And then Z is usually coming out in that third dimension for us. So what I'd like to do is focus just a little bit on the Y. And I am smirking to myself right now at the double entender of that phrase. The Y, meaning the letter, the penultimate letter of the alphabet. The sideways axis from side to side. Or let's talk about our why. WHY, a concept made famous by one Simon Sinek, whom I admire tremendously. His teachings, his ideas, his workshops are enormous motivators and movers in my own life and the way that I stay on top of my positive game. So, in the idea of sideways, what I wanted to focus on today while we talk is when things go sideways, how do we feel about it? Right? In the connotation sense, in the whole um, cultural idea of what sideways could mean, the first thing I think of is, well, that went sideways, meaning that did not go as expected, and the connotation is not overly positive. Now, that being said, I would also like to say that when things go sideways, that's when my superpower shows up. When things do not go as expected, what do we do? Frustration, anger, disappointment, reactionary thinking and actions usually come into play. I've found that my first knee jerk reaction is rarely my best choice. I like to think about it a little bit longer before I take action on it whenever I have my wits about me. Some things make me so upset that the first thing I do is knee jerk, and that is almost always cause for a little bit of blush and perhaps tinge of regret. I don't like using that word. I don't like feeling that way. I want to continue to be better about regulating my own emotions and thinking about things for just a second before I take action. When things go sideways, that's when I really start to enjoy the situation. Not that planning doesn't have its place, it most certainly does. I am so fortunate to know so many effective and creative planners. I am. My other half of the Adventure Dudes is one of the best I know at it. And when things go sideways, as they are inevitably going to do at some point during the program, it's really enjoyable to watch someone who usually has everything completely and totally under control get fuzzed up because something goes against their plan. I know that's just evil. It's just evil. But there's a part of me also that loves the fact that they take so much comfort in knowing that they have planned and controlled every single variable of their equation in their estimation. And Mother Nature has a way of just futzing it up. And when she does, which she is so often want to do, the upset is so fun. Because there's nothing wrong with unexpected. As a matter of fact, there's a whole lot of growth and excitement and adventure lying just on this other side of the unknown. We know this. We talk about this all the time. It reminds me of that movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey. It's old as the hills, but it's so apropos to this conversation that we're having because yes. Well, what's the answer? Yes. I can't say no. The answer is yes. Is it difficult? Of course it is. Is it completely out of my comfort zone? Wow, is it ever? Did you die? Well, considering the fact that I'm perched in front of this microphone running my mouth at us all right now, the answer is pretty clear. We have got to get more comfortable for when things go sideways because that is so much of the nourishment that we get. Like, okay, my friends that I was mentioning earlier that are so very particular and so meticulous in their planning, I admire that tremendously. It is not a talent I enjoy. It's one I could probably like hammer out if I needed to. Not great at it. Not to the extent they are. I 100% give them the credit for that, and I bow to their magnificence in itinerary creation. Well done. However, you would be hard pressed to find a monster out there who is better at going with flow when things go sideways. I pride myself on it. I want to continue to cultivate that talent. Why? Because so often it does. Okay, so what are some of the secrets to that? Hey, let me tell you, they ain't no secret to any of it. Just so we're clear, this is not a secrecy thing. I am not a gatekeeper of any sort. You just have to be willing to go with it. And sometimes I find myself in a place where I don't love that. And okay, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's instinct or if it's preservation or what have you, I get twisty about it. I do. I'm not saying I'm the best at it. I'm saying I'm real good at it. And I think that some of the most exciting adventures of my life have come from it. Whenever I was getting ready to go to Nepal to trek Everest, I was going with a very good friend of mine from Ships. He and I had planned the trip. We were ready to go. Everything was great. And then right before he was supposed to leave to join me in Nepal, I was already there. I was already at the hostel waiting on him to arrive so we could get started on the grand adventure of trekking Everest. He reaches out to me. He says, bad news. They won't let me go anywhere except back to the United States because I don't have more than 6 months validity left on my passport. I'm sorry. Huh? Exactly. So now what I was thinking was going to be this grand adventure. A, I was going to split the expense. B, I was not going to be completely and totally alone in a wildly exotic and foreign nation. And now I was flying this whole thing so low. Sideways. 100%. Was there fear? Of course there was fear. Are you kidding me? I'm not going to joke anybody to tell you that I wasn't afraid, that I wasn't nervous, that my guts didn't tie in knots whenever I understood that I was going to be by myself and all that entailed. Here's another fun part. The more I did by myself, the more surprises revealed themselves to me in doing these things alone. Oh, right. Okay. I have to pay for single occupancy in these places where I was staying, or I have to pay for this entire excursion by myself, where before I was expecting this to be a team expense, or dining by myself, or experiencing some of the most intense highs of my life, pun intended, and having so few people around me that I knew to share it with them. Now, there were people on the trek that weren't necessarily part of my party that we saw in all of the tea houses and the things along the way and all of the lodgings and this, that, and the other, where we could talk about what we saw and what we were feeling and these kind of things in the nights whenever we were sort of guarded from the elements. What I didn't have was somebody that I'd known for years there at my side, talking about the things and comparing the things that we knew or trying to wrap our heads around something new and different. And here's the best part. When I didn't have that, when I wasn't given the choice and I wasn't given time to prepare for an alternate, that's a big deal too. Sometimes when things go sideways, the first thing we want to do is just launch into preparing something as a standby to make sure that nothing unplanned or unexpected happens, that we want to make sure that we stay on top of everything, that we know as much about every possible situation as possible so that we don't waste, quote unquote, a single moment of this experience. I'm here to tell you, friends, when things go sideways and you're ready to sort of tilt with it, that is one of the single most growing and pride instilling moments of an experience. Well, why would you say that, James? That just seems a little counterintuitive. It also just seems like it's leaving a whole lot of stuff left to chance. No, no, no. I get that, and to an extent, I think you're right. I think what it's also doing is instilling an incredibly enormous amount of faith in the fact that the world, the universe, and the people who comprise both of those ideas are inherently good, and that the forces connecting us all conspire for our success, enjoyment, and love. Wow, that just got really touchy-feely, didn't it? Yes, it did. I have zero need to be here to stay surface level with anything. I get enough of that in my day-to-day exchange. I get enough of that in trying to make that dollar so I can keep a roof over head and food in this belly. What I don't have time for at this juncture in my life and what I'm currently going through, me personally, James Bullard, I want to get real deal, nitty gritty with anybody who wants to meet me in the dirt and talk about these kinds of things. This is where our connection happens. This is where the division ends, and we all come together to decide on it. Sideways. The election didn't go the way I expected. To me, that seems like a sideways situation. There are things on the horizon for the future of both the United States and the world that I cannot see. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a political scientist. I'm not any of those kind of things. I'm not an economist who could possibly predict what's coming. What I am is willing to, again, go with the flow to an extent, stand up for what I know is right, and get in the face of all those who are trying to work against it. And I think both of those situations can be seen as sideways, especially from where I'm standing. Context. I'm looking at it. That's not ideal in my summation. What it is what we've done. So now it is my mission to look at it, to understand that this is my definition of sideways. And I am going to do the best I can with what I've got. And I'm also going to make sure that the things that I hold dear, the things I've prioritized highest on my list, continue to get done. And the thing that I put highest on that is connection. There are people I will give a wide berth to for the next however long because I need them to understand that there are consequences to actions, ideas, politics, and beliefs. They are people that I'm going to pull into me closer and more tightly and make sure that I warm them just as strongly as I can with the light and the life that I try to live, and make sure they know that if they are afraid or uncertain or feel as though the whole thing is coming down around them, that there will be at least a couple of reasons for them to hold on until they figure out where their new forward is located. That's another great one. Forward, back. Which way we going? There's a tide that moves us all. Okay, we can't really avoid that many times. A tide is incredibly strong. Oh my goodness! I remember we went on an adventure hike once in Hawaii. My brothers from Oh What a Night, the Frankie Valley group with whom I sing, we were out and we took this epic hike through the woods, into the water, across this inlet, onto this rocky beach. And there was this ridiculous amount of current that was sort of mashing us against the rocks as we were trying to cross it to get to the other side of the inlet so that we could be there, enjoy the view, and also a little bit of a challenge. You know, what's life without just a little bit scared that you're going to get mashed up against a rock? We jump in the water. It's tossing us across the waves. I think I'm a pretty strong swimmer. I used to be a lifeguard. Made it across, and we realized that one of our parties lost a flipper. Without the flipper, they almost didn't make it across. And without the flipper, we're almost certain that they could not make it back across to get back to the truck miles away. So I jump in thinking that I can do something special with it, trying to chase this thing down in the middle of all of this tide and current and whatever, getting tossed around like a sock in a dryer. Okay, just so we're clear. Now, I did get the flipper, could not find or figure out a way to attach that to something so that I could get back to the shore. So I had to abandon it. And then a taller, stronger swimmer among us got it, brought it back to shore, and everything was fine. But the thing that I wanted to remember from that story is the fact that tides and currents are incredibly strong. They're working with forces of nature that, for all intents and purposes, are probably going to be overwhelming to one human being. And whenever I can't handle it, I'm going to have to call in some help. See how that went? I'm going to have to call in somebody with just a little bit more strength. I'm going to have to call in somebody who's going to know how to handle a situation a little bit better than I could. And I'm going to lean on them so we can all continue to move in a positive direction, whether that's up, down, forward, sideways, however we want to look at it. We got to continue to focus on things like that. Unexpected is not bad. Unexpected is simply something we did not see coming. I want to continue to say that we are so quick to slap a sticker on something. And if it doesn't come with a sticker, we want to squeeze it, pinch it, like put it through the ringer to make sure that we can find a way to classify that thing just as quickly as we possibly can. Like I mentioned earlier in this episode, my buddy and I would talk about things a lot. And I was like, you continue to try to make some kind of binary out of something that isn't. I said, you continue to try to make an A or a B conversation, a one or a zero out of this, and Mother Nature ain't having it. She just is not having it. So many things we think we know for certain. The whole thing is a shades of gray situation. All right. And that makes people really uncomfortable. Why? Well, first thing that pops into my mind is religion. Whenever I was a kid growing up, it was very clear that some things were very right and some things were very wrong. And it was very clearly cut, very boldly drawn lines. And that's just what it was. Now, the older I got and the less ignorant I became, not calling religion ignorance, please understand that is not at all what I'm saying. Saying I was ignorant because I was a child. I didn't know any different. I didn't know any better. When I did, I started realizing that those boldly drawn lines and those very clear cut definitions of all these things that I'd been taught were beginning points. It's much easier to keep a child safe by putting absolutes in front of them. Once I become a fully functioning adult, capable of making informed decisions, making my own way in the world, paying my own bills, buying my own draws, you learn more. You I like to say you become less stupid. What I want to say is I'm moving into a place in my life now. I want to say that I'm becoming wiser now than I was. I still got loads to learn. Make no mistake, and I continue to get that lesson on the daily, sometimes harshly, and I want to welcome it. I want to be good at being wrong, to quote another very good friend of mine. And when I'm wrong, I want that lesson to sting just enough so that I never forget it. I'm telling you, as we age, those memories, mine starts, it's wore out. Okay, there's a lot of life in this noggin of mine, and new information is sometimes hard to stick. All right, I'll admit it. I'm not proud of it. I can't deny it because I have proof of it every day. Studying Dutch is the most humbling experience I've gone through in a minute. Not only do so many of the words feel similarly, the way they arrange their words in order for the syntax to make sense in Dutch makes zero sense to me in American English. Okay, just so we're clear. If I get something right on my Duolingo, whenever I have to go from literally square one and build the whole thing, they give you a phrase in English. You're supposed to translate it into Dutch. If I get that entirely right, it is by miracle. I hope that the practice will continue to hammer this into my head so that eventually it will become reflexive. I want to be open so that whenever things go weird, whenever things unplanned come across my desk, I'll be ready for them. Not just ready, I'll be excited for them. If everything went exactly as they were according to plan, let me try that again. If everything went according to plan, how bored would you get? Granted, also it'd be really, really great for a good while. I'll be honest. Yeah. I mean, that does sound pretty sweet. If you do the thing and the fully expected outcome happens and you just truck on about your life like, mischief managed, number next, and you just keep on going. Great. Yes. I would like to offer a differing opinion on that. Supposing everything goes exactly as planned for a month, right? Literally 30 days of I do the A, the B happens, completely expected, shazam, look at the awesome. And then after 30 days, you got to go back to the way things were. Could you imagine how much more frustrating that would be after having a month of perfect? Blech. I think if we train ourselves, if we condition ourselves to be ready and excited for the sideways, I think that's a much healthier way of going about it. I know a lot of people get real frustrated about things like this. I've seen them. Like I've been with them whenever it happens, and I get it. I mean, I don't think that's too against human nature to get frustrated whenever things don't happen the way you expected them to happen. I get it. I absolutely do. I think it is it's almost like a strength that has to be exercised in order to be strong enough to continue doing it. Practice makes permanent. When things go sideways, like, okay, that was not what I thought would happen. I can work with this. And I move through it and I move past it and I'm better because of it whenever I get to the other side. I can't tell you the amount of peace I have been able to derive from this kind of mindset. I see folks, this isn't judgy or accusatory. What this is just observation. I see folks that let the tiniest things just really mess up their day, week, month, longer. And I hate it for them. I do. It breaks my heart for them because I look at the thing. I have the privilege of looking from the outside. If you're dealing with it directly, it can always seem a lot more insurmountable. I get that and I acknowledge it. I give the respect it deserves. Whenever I just kind of like let things go, easier said than done. Again, practice, exercise. These things get way easier to do. Well, James, well, don't you care about anything? Of course I do. You know what I care about most? Me. I know how selfish that's going to sound. I absolutely do. I admit it. It's taken me a minute to get here. It doesn't mean that everyone else isn't important, but I tell you what I'm going to do is pinch this pointer finger and this thumb real close together like I'm like, and at the top of my ladder, I am that much more important than everything else. I think that's healthy. I think that's wise. I think what that is self-preservation. I think that if I'm going to accomplish all the big stuff that I set out to do, and so far it's served me pretty flipping well, done a lot of really cool stuff, I have to think like that. I do. Now, should I be so lucky as to involve myself in a romantic relationship of some sort, I have a feeling that I will put that person, thumb and forefinger pinch, that much more above my own. Because I'll be frank, I think that's really all one needs to do in order to make a relationship very successful. That's a whole other episode just waiting to happen. But I tell you, that's really where I sit on this. I don't think it takes a whole lot to make a relationship successful. I think what it takes is you making sure that the other person's needs are put ever so slightly ahead of your own about 50% of the time. Uh, that's just the way that I look at it. As far as my friendships go and some of the folks that I've dated in the past, that has seemed to serve well. And I think that while I'm doing this solo flight. And even if I wasn't, when in regard to everything else, I need to make sure that I keep myself on top so that my health and my perspective, my mindset are as neutral as I can get them so that I continue to go with the flow whenever things don't flow in the direction I'm expecting them to go. Up, down, sideways, I want to make sure that no matter which direction I'm heading, that I just keep moving. Thank y'all for joining me for another episode of Radical Joy. It's always such a pleasure to have this time with you every week. If this is your first episode, thank you so much for being with us. I hope you've gotten something out of this. I hope something that I've been able to say today moved you to a point where you wanted to talk back to your device that you're listening on and say, yeah, or you got to be out your mind, or what? That's what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that you don't just listen passively, that you join in somehow, that you feel moved to engage. Speaking of engagement, if you're the review type of person, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. Take a screenshot of it. Make sure you send it to us here at CLW Studios and Radical Joy. We would love to thank you with a bit of Radical Joy swag that we'd be happy to send to you. More than likely, it's going to be a sticker, something you can put on a water bottle, a laptop, a journal. We love a journal. If this is not your first episode, welcome back. Please, friends, know how much we appreciate your returning to be with us here every week at Radical Joy. You are the lifeblood. You are the support and the friends that we need and love and appreciate so very much. Speaking of, I want to make sure you know we're about to start season 3 of Radical Joy, and we could not be more excited about it. Thank you for the continued support and the success we enjoy because of your presence. Never forget how much we love y'all.